That was so good. That scene was so good.
So sadistic, the scene. It just was like, but it really does emphasize it at that moment. It emphasized the point where it's like they have no hope. Where like this was their chance. They thought like, oh, you're gonna get saved. They're not getting saved.
Welcome. This is A Lost Plot, the podcast where cinematic plots are taken apart piece by piece to determine what makes that movie great or why it has been forgotten today. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of A Lost Plot. I'm your host, Maverick, here with our guest, Avalon.
Hola, hello, konnichiwa, and leho.
All right. Today we are discussing the movie The Menu. Released in 2022, it's an American comedy horror film written by Seth Rice and Will Tracy and directed by Mark Mylod. It has starring Ralph Fiennes. I always forget how to say this guy's name. Ralph.
It's he who,
with Chef.
It's he who
Slower.
must not be named.
Exactly. Abracadabra. Yeah, we're dealing with Voldemort himself as the chef, which makes sense if you think about it. Spoilers for anyone who's watching. I mean, that's not really a spoiler, dude. It's kind of indicated from the minute they're taking the tour on the island. So I don't think that's... Anyways. Anna Taylor-Joy as Margot and Nicholas Hoult as Tyler, etc., etc. But before we get into the meat of The Menu, what is The Menu about?
Well, the IMDb has the shortest synopsis I think I've seen on one of these movies. It just simply says a young couple travels to a remote island to eat at an exclusive restaurant where the chef has prepared a lavish menu with some shocking surprises.
Yeah. Well, that's an understatement. Yeah, there's this movie. Definitely the word I was struck by when I finished watching it was interesting. Some people who are critics in the overall movie space, I will not name who, but some think this is an amazing movie. I thought there was a lot going for it, but it also had some things that were a little odd. So we'll get into that. But there was a lot of intentionality in this movie, which is appreciated. So everything in this movie is down to the last detail, very intentional. In from what I've seen, every course, every person, every action that they're taking, who is involved, like it's all very, very important, and so there's no coincidences there. It's almost like in some ways it has the intentionality of a lot of murder mysteries that have a lot of little bits everywhere that you're supposed to pick up on everything because it all goes together. And that's part of the theme here because it's a menu and it's a lavish, extravagant course. Every ingredient for the movie is important. So there is, I think, the artistic design of this movie, which is very beautiful. That being said, let's get into it. So the opening scene, everyone is getting on this boat to go to an island to get dinner. It's an expensive dinner.
They're going to an expensive restaurant that's
Yeah.
very remote, very expensive, like supposedly one of the best chefs in the world.
Yeah.
Chef
He's like
Slovak.
an internationally known chef. And I think it's like $12,500 a plate or something like that. It's
to go to this meal. Yeah.
Yeah. It's quite expensive. What did you think in regards to an opener and how they introduced us to Margot and Tyler and then the whole crew?
I mean, it's kind of like a basic setup, giving us a little glimpse of characters because like it doesn't like give you a full like this is who someone is. Like only give it like a brief introduction to each character, kind of getting ideas like okay, this is like Margot's character. What's her name? Shoot. Oh no, that is her name.
That is her name. Yeah.
Sorry.
A lot of these characters only have first names too.
Yeah.
They don't have.
So Margot and Tyler were introduced to them, and it's like, okay, they're a couple, and like clearly, he's really into food and all this other stuff. She is not.
Yeah, she
It's
doesn't
not
care.
like she's along for the ride because he's paying for it, but she's like, okay. Um, it's not till later you discover that he actually paid for her services because she's a call girl.
Yeah, exactly. An escort.
Yeah, and then you're also introduced to the critic and uh, the movie star and his secretary,
And his
the rich,
wife,
the
the
billionaire
movie
couple.
star, the professor, and
uh, and then what was the three guys? The three guys who were together, are they like stockholders or?
they were businessmen. So they were in business with the character who only shows up briefly in the movie.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I
his
understood that
name
part of it.
was Doug Derrick or something like that.
Yeah, they worked for
Something
him,
like
and
that.
he owned like kind of owned the restaurant that Chef
He
Slivick was
was
at.
an angel investor in Hawthorne.
hmm So I just
Anyways,
wasn't clear to me like, are they? What are their relations like? Are they like? I was almost not sure if they were like stockholders, like uh, men of the company, or like it was like for me it was like what did they?
well, probably there is some degree that they are stockholders because
Mm-hmm.
it looked like it was an angel investment firm of some sort,
Mm-hmm.
but what exactly they did, it wasn't clear. The important point was that they big kind of shady businessmen.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Anyways,
Spoilers.
so yeah, I mean that's not a big the whole thing is everyone seems a little uppity and presumptuous when they get onto the at
The
least
boat.
into the diner at the very
Mm-hmm.
least. So you get this impression that these characters, while they're all very wealthy, maybe aren't the nicest people to hang around. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the big thing that you see play out as the story progresses. But yeah, as an opener, I thought that they did well at establishing the primary characters, not telling you too much about them, and you don't need to know a lot about them anyways, but
Mm-hmm.
just showing who they were and where they were going and why they were going there. Pretty decent. So they get to this island, they start getting served courses, they get the tour of the place, all that good stuff. There's what is there? 7 courses, 9 courses? I don't
I
remember how many.
honestly forget. I lost track. I mean, let's be honest. Some of the survey, like some of them, just kind of. I don't even remember what the first one was. Like, because it starts off like ordinary, I guess. It's almost like, okay, this is like
Mm-hmm.
maybe an artistic thing you'd see at a fancy restaurant. Like, okay,
Yeah,
whatever. Like, I mean, it's kind of weird, but it's like it doesn't throw you off. But like as the
yeah,
courses progress, it gets more and more weird, and it gets to the point like this is not okay. Like this is like okay, we've just gone into very strange territory. Like this is not something you'd find anywhere, and like
yeah,
how this is
exactly.
happening, this is just wrong on so many levels.
Yeah, I
And
think the
it's
first one was like jellied melons or something with seaweed on
mhm,
top and some sort
yeah.
of powdering over that.
hmm
Obviously, I'm not a food critic, so I'm not the person to ask about the details of it. But it looks lavish. Then they add the next one was it was like bread, but without the
Yeah, the bread
bread.
one I remembered because it was like an insult almost, like the way it
Yeah,
happened. It was like they got sauces but no bread.
yeah, and that
Like it
was
was.
no, it was they wanted bread and they were like, no, you're not getting bread. That's the whole point. I
mm,
almost thought that they were going to give Margot bread
mm,
because they identified her as someone different, but they didn't.
mm.
Um, and I think at that point too, the chef didn't. I hadn't quite identified Margot's character as someone unique to the party who didn't really belong there. But
Well, it was clear that her presence upset him. Whereas, like, okay, you weren't. When I envisioned this evening, you are not what I planned at all for this role.
right,
So it's like,
exactly,
do you belong here, or should I move you to a different role, more or less? So it's like he's
right,
trying to figure that out as the evening progresses, and as the evening progresses, and she finds out what's going on, she has to figure out, wait, where do I stand in all this?
yeah, exactly.
mm-hmm.
But I would say that really you just get odd vibes, which is pretty usual. I don't. So when it comes to horror movies, Usually they either just jump right into it or they have some big bombshell and they
Mm-hmm.
still have that sense of foreboding as it gets worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point it's just kind of eerie. You're not really
Mm-hmm.
sure what's
Well,
going
I mean, this
on.
movie, even as a horror movie, this movie doesn't have like jump scares necessarily. It's more like it's just this very eerie tension that just gets worse as it progresses. Like the tension just ratchets up as things go along, and there's just like there's no hope. It seems by the end,
Yeah.
and you even get like it's just this gradual ratcheting up, and it just gets like this overwhelming sense of oppression and like
Yeah.
darkness and whatnot.
Yeah. I would say that in regards to horror that I've seen, it's not, granted, I'm not a huge consumer of horror, but there are some horror
Mm-hmm.
movies that I have appreciated or some that I've trashed, whatever. I'll watch horror from time to time, but
Mm-hmm.
this was very different for the genre. I can see why it's categorized as a horror. That being
Mm-hmm.
said, I don't know that I would have categorized it as a horror personally.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's just because I'm so jaded
It
against the
might be. It
horror
might be more of a
genre.
thriller. It might be more of a
Yeah,
thriller than a
yeah,
horror movie because it's definitely more. It's not. Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, I would say that everyone really starts to realize that something's off around the third course. You might, if
Mm-hmm.
you want to say the fourth, where Jeremy, the sous chef, kills himself, you can. I would say before that, where they have the tortillas that have incriminating evidence about how terrible these people are,
Mm-hmm.
is really
Yeah.
where it or at least at maybe not all of them are incriminating evidence because the movie
Well, it's
star
like
just shows his
it
movie, but
just
it
yeah.
shows they
Well,
know a
it's
lot about these people.
yeah. It just shows how much the chef and the restaurant staff know about each of the get customers and the diners, and it's
Yeah,
like and it's not just they know you, they know some of the worst things about you more or less, or some of the rules you're breaking, or because it's like, for example, the affair, the rich couple, the husband like having an affair with the call girl, like that doesn't
yeah,
affect anyone except him, more or less. It's
right.
like he might get in trouble with his wife or something, but then you have the three business guys who have like the shady business deals with like the illegal transfers or whatever,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
and
Laundering
then you
money.
have the and then you have the fanboy Tyler, like it's pictures of him taking pictures of the food. Whereas like after they
Yeah, that was
told him like
impressive that
don't
they
take
pulled that out
pictures,
so quick.
yeah,
Just laser printed that on there or whatever they were doing. Laser etching on the tortillas.
yeah,
Anyways, it was, I thought that that's where it really got instigated because that's
mm-hmm.
where people really started to realize that something's really off about this
Yes,
and people start to
mm-hmm.
speak out. What did you think in regards to that scene?
In regards to that scene, I mean, as I said, this movie is very gradual, where it's like it's not like suddenly these things happen. It's like these like changes, like things start ratcheting up. The danger level starts to become more apparent as it
Yeah,
goes along. The stakes are raised. Um, so I mean, in this sense, it was I didn't really feel like this was a drastic change from the prior one. It just was like things have just got ratcheted up again, and it's like things are way different. And because I think
yeah,
like the major thing that showed this was a change was when they tried to leave. Like what's his name? The rich couple tries to leave, and
and
he's
they
like,
can't.
the boat is gone. There is no cell coverage, so they can't call anyone on their phones. Like they're literally stranded on this island, and they
Right.
just find out about this now after
Yeah,
like three courses in.
yeah,
And of course, this is also the scene when the they decide to cut off one guy's finger,
yeah. I forget, why
which
did they do that again?
that's what I'm trying to remember. Like, why did they do that? It was just like, it was just
It
like I think he was pushing. I don't know if it was because he was pushing so hard, like for the staff to let them go, and or what. I mean, they cut off his ring finger. I
there
remember
was,
that.
oh yeah, he's trying to leave, that's right. And then they say, and then they reply right hand or left when he's
Yeah.
trying to leave, and everyone's confused, and they say, well, if you don't want to make a choice, we'll make one for you. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when they choose the left hand and cut off his ring finger.
Mm-hmm.
That was it was a little odd.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly there was intentionality even in that, talking about the damage to the marriage that he had been
Mm-hmm.
doing. That was just like a nod to that. So once again, everything in this is intentional, very clearly
Mm-hmm.
intentional, which was really great as a way that movies should be made. You only have hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours if you're pushing it with a nuclear
Some
bomb test at
yeah, some
Oppenheimer, but
bit.
you know, but for the most part, you don't have a lot of time. So if you're going to tell the story of someone's life or of some major event going on, you need to make sure that each scene is very intentional. And not only do they make every scene intentional, they make every element of every scene intentional, which was
Mm-hmm.
a wonderful piece to add to these movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, anyways, they go on to have more and more courses. Things go more and more worse, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Yeah,
Um,
things get more disturbing.
yeah, as
Just the
you
idea.
realize that everyone's going to die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not like everyone finds out all at once. Like several people gradually begin to realize and figure out that they're all going to die, and then eventually everyone figures out at some point that they're all going to die.
Yeah,
and
and you have
and it is funny though how they almost some of them try to deny it till it's too almost like too late. Where it's like even after the sous chef kills himself right in front of them, like with a bullet to the head, it's like the critic is like, it's just an act. It's like she's like
yeah,
trying to calm
Lillian
everyone
Bloom.
down. Yeah, she's like,
Yeah,
it's just an act. It's this is clearly some stage setup. It's just dramatic for the sake of drama.
yeah. She considers it part of his artistic flair as a chef, him
Mm-hmm.
adding to it. So it was, yeah, it was interesting to see how long she held out, and then how long that Tyler held out until you realize later that that's not what he was doing at all. But
Mm-hmm.
um, it was well built up, especially to have these different characters with different levels of belief.
Mm-hmm.
So they it moves on and on with each course as each course gets progressively worse.
Mm-hmm.
All of
And
the
more
people
people
are,
are just like dying. Though none of the diners like customers die because like you
yeah,
have the sous chef die, then you have what's the angel investor. He
yeah.
dies
The
like
angel investor gets dropped into the ocean and drowned.
in
Yeah,
front of them.
that
Yeah,
was something else.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So they're slowly making it appear more and more ominous, and
Mm-hmm.
then there comes a point where the chef tries to make Margot choose a side. It's not even
Mm-hmm.
clear that does she choose to go with which side she chooses to go with. It sounds like she chooses to stay with her people, to
No,
him.
she. So it is confusing because
No,
she
no, no, you're
does
right. She
pick.
does
Well, she
choose to go
does
with
choose.
him.
Yeah, and he also makes the connection that you're a service worker, not one of these lofty rich people. You belong on my side, not on their side. But he also has
Yeah,
like made it clear to her at that point everyone is going to die, including the chefs and the people under him.
yeah.
So,
He
and
just
it's clear
tells her
even
that.
they know that they're going to die. The chefs and the people who are working there. It's like they all know already. It
Yeah,
just like makes the whole thing even more disturbing.
yeah. This is all a pre-planned massacre, or like
Mm-hmm.
a self massacre in some ways, a
Mm-hmm.
suicide pact. So she's then enlisted to help get this barrel of stuff into the.
Oh, I do want to say, because I thought it was interesting,
Yeah,
just Tyler's character, because this was one of the things that actually did surprise me in the movie, like majorly surprised me at the moment, because he's acting the whole movie like kind of just going with it, almost like nothing is phasing him.
right.
Like,
He's oblivious, kind of like Lillian Bloom, who's the critic, but even
mm-hmm,
worse in some ways because she comes to a realization at some point that this isn't
mm-hmm,
just a act, that it's
mm-hmm.
real, and he's still just doing his thing, enjoying the meal. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's still being the fanboy of Chef Slovak, where it's like, this is amazing food, this is of course another symbol of this or whatnot. Like he like gets all into it, and then it's suddenly revealed, like he gets called out, and it's like revealed at that moment that he's the only one of the guests who knew that they were all going to die tonight.
Yeah.
where it's like he came there knowing he was going to die, but he's such a fanboy, he still wanted to go and like impress his hero, his idol, Chef Slovak somehow.
Yeah,
And
it
it's
was
like,
so interesting.
yeah, and it's also like, and it also makes him a really despicable character on a certain level at that moment, because he then him bringing Margot along means he knew he was bringing her along to die,
Yeah,
and she's
he
understandably upset at that moment when she realizes that he intentionally did that.
yeah, he was bringing her along to kill her and
Mm-hmm.
himself, and he was willing to do it for the sake of having this experience with the chef, which
Mm-hmm.
makes him in some ways a more psychotic character than any of the other characters
It's
in the
true. Yes.
maybe not as much as the chef. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure, but like
Mm-hmm.
clearly he's a psychopath on another level if he's doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's kind of the
So
whole idea of like a fanboy, like an extreme fanboy, or someone who idolizes something that looks to or somebody to an extent that they'll go to great lengths to
I
like
will die for
be,
you.
yeah, like I'll die for you. I would like I would do anything to be with this person or do this thing or to have this experience. And it's like he clearly does that, or he's like, and he's kind of given the opportunity where he's like, you can cook in my kitchen, you can cook a like impress me with your food, and then as he's cooking, it becomes clear he's like being mocked by the chef, or it's like
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
he's putting the pressure on him intentionally making him look stupid in the kitchen, cooking and everything. And then when he like cooks his meal, which is awful, the chef like completely degrades it, saying this is crap. And like,
yeah,
and he puts uh, Tyler down to the what is it? Yeah, Tyler to the point like Tyler just commits suicide like immediately after that scene, like
right. He
off
goes into
screen,
the
like no
next
one's
room. Yeah,
yeah. Like you just see him walk away, and it's not until Margot goes to get the barrel that she looks in the room and sees that he hanged himself.
yeah,
And it's
that's
just like,
right. That's right.
mm-hmm,
I thought that happened after the barrel, but now that you mention it, yeah, it happened before. It's
mm-hmm,
that to me was the real big. This is the worse than you could have imagined kind of situation where
mm-hmm.
things are truly terrible for her and for everyone else. Where you're dealing with a whole host of psychopaths, and no one is really a great person, but no one's probably getting out of this alive.
Yeah, mm-hmm,
Um, so there's a little bit more that goes on. The big
mm-hmm.
thing is the final course and what happens right before the final course. But
Well, you could say when
before
she gets
that,
the barrel, yeah.
right, I will say the point that is still noteworthy is the interaction with Dale, because that I loved that scene of all the movie. This was my favorite scene.
I
Um,
figured you would like that scene.
I loved that scene. That moment for me was like a. So, anyways, to catch everyone up, there is the scene where Margot goes into the chef's house, which shouldn't she's not allowed to go into. Doesn't it look exactly like the house she was just in?
A little bit, yeah. But
Yeah, it
there's like
looks
a
like
door, but like there's that door that looks exactly the same as the other door.
yeah, but they
Uh,
also have a seating area just like in the other house, and they
yeah.
had a kitchen and everything. It was very odd. It looked like
Mm-hmm.
the same thing, but she goes back in there and she finds a radio. She finds a picture of the chef
Well, she
at
finds
a
his life
burger
work
joint.
with like all his pictures, his like newspaper clippings, like memorable moments, more or less. But like standing apart from everything else, like almost in a place of honor, is like this picture of like a burger thing, like his first burger like cooking
Yeah,
experience or
working at a
something.
burger joint when he was 16, 18, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then she uses a radio to telephone the Coast Guard and SOS signal.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gets back, and the Coast Guard arrives,
Mm-hmm.
and he's checking to make sure everything's okay. But the chef warns them that if they tell him that they're in danger, they're going to kill the Coast Guard.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you really want to kill another man for no reason? And that's it looks like he's just going to walk out there. No one's going to help him. Then the movie star, he sees the movie star, he asks for the movie star's autograph. He says, okay. He gives him an autograph, but really it says help us on it instead of their autograph. So then the Coast Guard pulls out a gun and he's like, everyone on the ground, and they're all saying, yeah, save us. It's the chef, yada yada. And then he takes the gun, he points at a candle, and it turns out it's just a lighter. And he lights the candle. That was so good. That scene was so good.
So sadistic, this scene. It just was like, but it really does emphasize it at that moment. It emphasized the point where it's like they have no hope. Where like this was their chance. They thought like, oh, you're gonna get saved. They're not getting saved. It's like this is just another chef in disguise as a Coast Guard acting a part. And as soon as that happened, it's like, oh, we're not getting rescued. We're not getting out of here. It's just like, it just drives home the point. Like it's almost like it's over. Like there's no way to get out.
They're done. They're done. Yeah, no, it was just such a great twist. And Dale played it off so well. He looked like he was just genuinely a Coast Guard doing his Coast Guard thing, taking care of everyone. But no, he's a bad guy. So it was great. Loved it. Not I didn't love that he's a bad person. I just love the scene. It was a great twist, Truly appreciated it. Anyways, enough of that. The end scene really is right before they're gonna have dessert, and then Margot, Margot says, "Oh, I haven't eaten anything. All your food is crap."
Well, it's like she gets this idea. She's like has this realization, and she actually, in a way, starts because up until then she's just trying to figure out how to survive, like how to is there a way to get out of this? But then she suddenly decides to play by the chef's rules, like about with cooking, and she's like, I want to return my food. Like I'm not satisfied with the food you've provided, and it's almost like even the dialogue between them in that scene is like very intentional if you pay attention, where it's like restaurant diner lingo, but it's very intentionally said like to convey other things as well. And it's like she goads him into making her something else, into making a burger, a simple burger for her.
Right. And she just wants a simple meal compared to all this excessive extravagance.
And it's like, and he takes the bait and decides, oh, I'll cook you something else since you've requested it. And in a sense, it's like, because he complains about losing his love for cooking, losing his love for the craft, more or less, what he got him into this business. In that sense, like you see him cooking a burger, and it's like he's cooking something simple, and he kind of rediscovers a little bit in that scene that love he used to have, that love, and then he brings it to her, and she actually enjoys it, like it's a good burger, and then
she only takes one bite,
She only takes one bite, but yeah.
So much for enjoying that. But
yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is, too, is it's interesting because he doesn't cook really any of the other food, but he does cook this. And that was a notable difference between this course and the other ones. But anyways, keep going.
No, it just, like she takes a bite and then she's like, can I take this to go? And it's almost like he has to decide in that moment, like, does he? Like, in the end, he does like, sure, like he lets her go. Based on that interaction, like what happened in that interaction.
It was the only way to play in his realm and ask to leave and get that permission. So yeah, that was a very interesting thing because she was playing by his rules, which is interesting too, just because clearly he's psychotic, right? And so for a psychotic character, generally they are, one of the things that defines them is they have their own set of rules and they go by those unapologetically but unwaveringly. And so for her to jump into his realm and say, okay, I'm going to play by your rules, is ironically, although it's entering the psychopath's world, that's how she ends up surviving. So yeah, that was a great bit for that too. And then they turn everyone into s'mores. So what was your favorite character?
uh, the s'more. Everyone died. Like everything is included, including the restaurant, the staff. Like it's all just goes up in one giant bonfire.
Yeah. Graham cracker crumbs everywhere.
Yeah.
I feel kind of weird talking about this movie in this way, but that's how they presented it. They
Yes, I
present
know. I understand. That's exactly what happens.
slightly
Like
tongue in
I
cheek,
just
but
and
the whole
just to
movie
be
was slightly
clear,
tongue in cheek.
just to be clear, no human flesh is consumed in this movie. Like this is not no
This is true.
cannibalism or anything. Like it's
This is
all
true.
real food that's eaten. There's
Yeah.
like people are killed, limbs are lost, and things like people are chased down and stabbed and things, but that's all that happens. Like it's all
Yeah.
like
They
for a
gave
movie
the
that's called
gift
the
bag. The gift
yeah.
bag had the finger in it too. It was like, what? What are we doing?
Oh my word. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Kind of
If I had to
crazy movie.
choose I don't know. If I had to choose, I mean, because the reality is this movie is full of despicable characters.
Yeah.
Um, I though that thing I did appreciate about as far as the characters go is they do kind of like, even though this is a critique of the food industry at a certain level, like the professional, like I don't know, like the criticism of the food industry, maybe. Like
Hmm.
you could apply it to other industries as well, where it's like you have the rich person who just consumes because they can everything, and it's like
Right.
they just and like they don't really appreciate it, they just do, and then you have the critic who criticizes everything because they can, and it's just
Right.
like then it's like the fanboy who just loves everything, even without
Right.
regardless of whether it's actually good or not, and then you have and then you
Businessmen
have
just throwing their money around.
yeah,
Yeah.
throwing their money around and like trying to look important. And the same with the movie actors, like trying to get leverage, like, hey, I love this food, like just to get his name out there, like to
Yeah.
manipulate things.
Being just showing that he is someone by going to
Mm-hmm.
this, all the fame that surrounds him, trying to maybe rekindle that a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um so that was an interesting point. I was about to bring that up, that all of the characters seem to represent something, and I think you
Mm-hmm.
touched on all of them pretty well. The
Yeah.
only one, and I don't know if you have an answer for this because I don't, but there were 12 guests, right?
Yeah.
And one's left out.
Are you talking about his mom or are you talking
Yeah,
about
his mom. I'm I have no idea what her, like, why she was there.
I mean, to be perfect, if there's a flaw with this movie, it's maybe that role because it's not. I mean, aside from the story, the disturbing
Hmm.
story about his
Hmm.
dad, like, because you know who it's like, that's when he introduces her and
Right.
tells the story. But
Right.
other than that, she's like this alcoholic at the side of the room who's like constantly drinking the whole night and maybe dropping snide comments here and there. But it's just like she really doesn't have much of a presence in the movie. Like, there's not really much she's doing.
Yeah.
So I guess if you could say if there's a flaw in this movie, it's her part because it's not clear what she's doing. Like what,
Yeah. And I
and
wonder,
even
it's not,
why the chef has her there to begin with.
yeah,
It's
like
not
he's
clear.
literally killing his own mother.
Yeah.
She
So.
she's like resigned herself to this fate is my impression,
Mm-hmm.
and she's drinking herself into a dull just acknowledgement of what's about to come. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really, yeah, she was, of all things, wasn't sure why she was there. Especially because everyone has clearly had a very strong impression to play in the
Mm-hmm.
movie, and hers was just so odd. Especially because, if anything, she looks like she fits more with the chefs and all of them. So why wouldn't she be with the chefs or something like that? But she's put on the floor with all of these super rich people, super snobby people, and
Mm-hmm.
she's very different from them. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that. Like, as I said, this might be the one part of the movie that's a little unclear. What
Hmm.
if she represents something? I don't know. I mean, because
Sure.
everything else is so intentional in this movie. This is the one part of the movie that's not, and it's like, why is she here? Like, aside from
Right.
the mention of the story, like he could have told the story another way, like shown a picture or something. I
Yeah.
don't know. Like there could have been other ways to bring it up, but it was odd. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, anyways, favorites. For me, I really liked Margot as a character. I generally
So
don't.
Marco's a great character.
Yeah, I don't always love to give the main character as the favorite because in some
Mm-hmm.
ways I feel like they should be the favorite because they're the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
But she was just such a great character. She was so unique, like her trying to go off and take her smoke break all the time and all that stuff was always just
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, here we go. This person is definitely different from all these snobby
Mm-hmm.
bourgeoisie that are here right now. She was great. What about you? I don't know if you have that or at least developed or someone that
Uh,
pissed you off or anything
I
like
mean,
that.
I would say Margot is probably my favorite character. I mean, because she's like a fully developed character, where it's like she had her likes, her dislikes, her like she had her faults even, like,
Hmm.
and she had like her own personality, as you said, and she even let's be frank, she killed someone in self defense at one point
Right,
during the movie. So it's
right,
like she's not a perfect person, and she's also willing to fight to survive. So it's
yeah,
like there are things about her. It's like she's a very interesting, complex character, and I liked that when I saw her.
yeah,
So
yeah.
um, least favorite character. I kind of want to say the movie star is my least favorite character, but that was only because he hasn't like of all the characters in the movie, like he's the one who doesn't really have like a really bad fault per se. Like everyone else kind of does things
Interesting.
that are evil. His one fault that the chef criticizes him for. I mean, he is an arrogant person. Like, don't get me wrong, he is arrogant and like he's like this like person who's like expecting things from other people who like
Right,
in a way he
and he's
shouldn't.
in a relationship with his more. I don't know if she was his secretary or what, but
Mm-hmm.
compared to, I know he has a wife,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Yeah.
mentioned to just briefly in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not he's having an affair, right? And that's
Yeah.
the other thing. But he's not doing other than that. He's kind of
Mm-hmm.
just a guy in the dumps.
Yeah. And I feel like I guess maybe it's because the chef like criticizes him for making a really terrible movie, for starring in a really terrible movie. And I guess I don't know. There was a part of me that was just like, for a character, I feel like that was not a good enough like reason to or flaw per se to hate him. I don't
Right,
know. It just the way it was presented in the movie. It was like it didn't negate anything in the movie. It just like it didn't. I felt like his character needed more development. I guess
right.
in the
Well,
moment, I felt like it.
yeah, I was trying to figure this out because, and I think this maybe just goes back to what you were saying earlier, is what
Mm-hmm.
each of these characters represented, whether it was, wealth and the power that comes from wealth, maybe the power that comes from just this, maybe it's similar to wealth, but like old money, or just these people who have this status in society, or people who have fame, like the actor, or
Mm-hmm.
these different things were trying to be represented as like elite classes. And so each of these different sectors of the elites were present in some way or another in
Mm-hmm.
this dinner. And the whole goal of the chef was to tear down each of those groups in their own small way.
Mm-hmm.
That was my impression, which is maybe going to the themes more than anything else of
Mm-hmm.
like the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat,
Yeah.
which isn't a perfect representation. I got that was like the biggest thing that stuck out to me, but then again, everyone dies, so not sure how that actually resolves that. But yeah, or the idea of the love of the simple life, where
Mm-hmm.
he's realizing he's lost all joy in that, and he takes that out on these people that he's catering to, who are this snobby, upper
Mm-hmm.
class, very entitled people. So, yeah. Anyways, I also wanted to note my least favorite character was or was the business partners, just because they seem very stock to me.
I could see
Um,
that. Yeah.
but what really pissed me off, and I don't know if you have an answer to this, but at the end of the movie, I was still stuck with why all of the chefs' underlings thought that there was this plan was so good and so fulfilling to them that they would kill themselves.
So here's the way I see it. Because the way the movie presented it and the way it happened, what essentially Chef Slovak had created at his restaurant was a cult. where it's like he had
Mm-hmm.
created this dynamic where his chefs, his underlings, weren't just chefs; they weren't just employees. And she even says it. What's her name? The head chef, like head
The
under
sous
chef was.
chef, yeah,
Yeah,
that helps list one of the meals.
yeah. She says we're not just employees here; we're family, kind of thing. Where it's like there's almost like this idea of a cult group here, where it's like they're like almost like this very religious kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like we follow the chef, we love the chef, we do what he tells us to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, and that's how I interpreted it. Because if you have that, if that is what the case is, it makes more sense for the chefs to follow along and to give their lives up because they believe they're doing something for a greater good, for something beyond themselves. Even if it's wrong, even if it's like
Mm-hmm.
demented and it's like you shouldn't, but some people's
Right.
minds are twisted that much along where it's like, okay, they actually believe this. This is what they hold to.
Yeah, and
So
I
and I'll
think
be
it.
honest, that part of the movie didn't bother me as much. What did bother me a little bit more is when she walks out, Margot, and none of the other guests try to escape at that moment. Because if there was a moment
Yeah,
to try to
well,
escape,
yeah, and then he even says like you all have had. If you really wanted to, you all could have escaped
mhm,
if you really tried, basically.
yeah,
But you guys didn't really try. Um, it was almost like you guys all played by my rules, and that's why you're dying. Which was it was an interesting line. Like, wow, that's a really interesting point, and it's very true. Like, if they
mhm,
had really tried, they should have been able to get out, but they didn't, and so
mhm,
they all failed.
yeah.
But it almost calls into question more why they all just decided, okay, yeah, now's the time to die with this man, and drink the Kool Aid with him like his chefs are, or
Yeah.
his subordinates are. Um, yeah,
I mean, on a
I also
symbolic level, it helps to tell the themes of the story, but from a logical perspective, it didn't make any sense. That particular
yeah,
moment.
yeah. I also just going back to that other point again. I do agree that explanation makes sense. I would contend that there wasn't enough given to support that, especially because the sous chef is explaining how the chef tried to have sex with her and she said no twice. Like, that's not an endearing sentiment to have related to your chef. So
Mhm,
I think that it wouldn't have taken a lot more, but they should have had more
mhm,
to just cement the idea that this is a cult, not just
mhm,
they're his employees who do his will, but that these people religiously or maybe in a class way or whatever way they wanted to present this, in some way they are so tied to the chef that they want to live their lives to the fullest by doing everything he says.
I mean, I maybe disagree with you on this point because I feel like the movie did this pretty well. Because like every time he claps, they stand to attention. Every time, like the
Sure.
way they sleep, like it's laid out in like a communal way. Like they like share the same like living quarters. The way that they like follow him and obey every word, like they're like in sync with everything he says. And then the head chef, like when Margot goes to get the barrel, she gets jealous of Margot and is like angry that she got sent to get the barrel. So she tries to kill Margot, and Margot has to kill her in self defense. Where it's like that whole motivation doesn't make sense unless she's like fully committed to this like ideal of the chef. Where it's like I'm like, and she feels like Margot is threatening her thing with the chef, like in her like position in this group. So it's like she tries to take Margot out.
Right. So I don't disagree that they are doing the things
Mm-hmm.
that make it a look like a cult. I
Mm-hmm.
just don't see the motivation for them being in the cult. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm trying to
Okay,
like,
I could
yeah,
see that.
obviously they're doing all of the actions of being in a cult. Like
Mm-hmm.
and you could try to explain away some of them by saying, "Oh yeah, of course you're going to stand to attention if you're taught to by the chef in the highest, most
Mm-hmm.
extravagant restaurant in the world." But whatever. Like, I still think you could also say that's part of a cultish kind of thing. The bigger
Mm-hmm.
thing is that I just didn't see there is motive for the chef to do what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
There's not clear, and you could also say he's psychotic because there's some degree where you have to be psychotic to be doing this. But um, my impression is these are just ordinary people. You know, at the end of the day, the chef is identifying him and the people he's with, all with Margot, and Margot's like, "Frick, no, we're not gonna do. I'm not gonna do this." Why wouldn't anyone else in the group be like that? So, all that to say is, I would have loved to see a little bit more, and I don't think it would have taken much. Like,
like given a reason why the other chefs were there,
right
or something.
between that
Okay.
scene with the sous chef and just a line or two other between someone else, or just explaining why they adore the chef, or why we have to get back at the bourgeoisie, the upper class, screw them, whatever. Like, just one or two other lines would have, I think, really satisfied me on that point. But anyways, I think it's significant. If you don't, let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe. Yeah. So, anyways,
And now
some
time
of the
for an ad
themes.
break.
Yeah, exactly. Brought to you by Truly.
And Blue Monkey.
Do you want to make it through? Do you want to make it through another mindless movie? Think of Truly next time you're at your recent restaurant, because they will truly make you enjoy this movie in a way you couldn't otherwise. Nice. All right. Themes. I know I talked a little bit about those already. Is there any others you think that are worth mentioning? Any that they tried to point out but failed at following through on? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like most of the themes, like, because this movie is almost all about the themes, where it's like all the symbolic nature, like the symbolic nature of everything is like, and the intention, the attention to detail. It's like, it's clearly highlighting certain ideas and themes. I mean, it's hard to not talk about any parts of this movie without talking about the themes that it represents in a way, where it's like it almost directly correlates to some things. I think we covered most everything. I can't think of.
It's almost like an Aesop's fable in some ways.
Yeah,
where it's like it's trying to have this message that you just carry with you going forward. I don't know how well it terminates that fable, but it gave me a very strong, like, this is a story you tell to your children.
Okay, well, I guess
maybe that's not a good takeaway.
So, well, in a way, I think you're not completely wrong with that, where it's like there is an aspect where it is highlighting a certain danger, where it's like with creative work, where it's like you can become so, like, you can forget the love, like why are you creating? Like, are you creating to create perfection, to please the higher ups or whatever? Or are you doing it because you love doing this, to do this? Like, it's very easy to lose yourself in this kind of, and whatever work it is, and just like forget why you're actually doing this, and to do it for reasons other than why you're doing it. And like, you just look at every creative industry out there, you will find people who've burned out, people who've fallen out of these industries because of, like, they couldn't do it because they lost the drive to do what brought them to it to begin with. And it's like, I think that is a core message of this movie, where it's like, be careful almost of, I mean, it's not direct. It's like, it's kind of directly part of the story because it's part of Chef Slovic's character.
Yeah.
And it's also like, and I think maybe there's also a subtle message of, it's like, don't be too overly critical of everything. Because sometimes there is more good in something than you like to think. Sometimes, I don't know. Like, sometimes, like, that could be a takeaway of the movie as well.
Yeah. Enjoy a simple burger.
Enjoy a simple burger. Yeah.
Nice. So what do you give this guy on a scale of 1 to 10? Do we hate this? Do we love it? What do you think?
So this is an interesting movie for me, because obviously, like, I don't watch this kind of movie very often.
Sure.
I'm kind of glad I did. I'll be honest. I kind of glad I at least watched it once. I'm probably never going to watch it again, but watching it once was worth it for me. I'll say, and everything is very well done. Like, as you said, there is like the attention to detail, the way the story moves along, most of the characters are fairly well developed to represent the points they're trying to make. The symbolism in this movie is spot on and everything. It's like, so there's a lot going for this movie. I mean, I would say I will. The only reason I'm detracting points from my score is because it's not a movie I would normally go see. This is not a movie I would like go out of my way to go see again.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of want to give it but it is fairly well made. It is spot on for most part. So I'll give it at least like a 6.9 or a 7.1. Like that's like I'll
Okay.
probably something like in that range.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a fair grade to give it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
It's a one well worth a watch for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And if you're afraid of horror, I don't know that I would use that as a detractor
Mm-hmm.
because is it technically horror? Yeah, but I don't think it's really deep into the horror genre. And so a
Well, I
lot of
mean,
those
it's not
things,
like. I mean, what is it about horror you don't like? That's probably the better question to ask. Like, is it like jump scares, like horrific, like bloody scenes and whatnot? There is a few bloody scenes in this movie, so like
sure.
you can't say there's none. There's a few. There are some fight scenes. There is a finger cut off at one scene. There's like
Yeah.
there are like
Someone does
gross
commit
out,
suicide.
and someone does commit suicide. Though it happens off screen, you just see
Right.
afterwards the body hanging from the rafters. But uh, so yeah, it just like it depends what you're into, like what part of horror you don't like. So I would say it's more of a
Yeah.
thriller, but there is some bloody scenes in it, and there are some disturbing elements. So
Yeah.
take
A
what you
lot
will
of
from that.
the disturbing things I found were more psychological. So
Yeah.
you won't be the biggest surprise honestly is Jeremy shooting himself, which you kind of see coming honestly. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not because they build up to it in that 2 minutes leading to the gun in his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean I would give it a 7.3. It's
Okay.
a solid movie. I think anything above a 7 for me, as I've said before on this podcast, is something that I think is quality.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth watching at least once. Once you get into
Yeah.
eights, it's about watching it again. If you love it, watch it more and give it a higher rating yourself. Whatever you want to do. But 7.3, I think, is a good number. It definitely had some notable things about it and some really aesthetically appealing parts that made me acknowledge it as giving some value there. Were there a
Mm-hmm.
couple discontinuities? Sure, but overall the plotline was pretty cohesive. There was a lot of great things going for it, and for that, it deserves a good rating. Cool. Well, that's all we got for today. We hope you all enjoyed. In all honesty, if you guys do enjoy watching this, please like and subscribe. Or if you're listening on a podcast, wherever you're getting your podcast, please subscribe, give us a rating. It really helps us out, and we will see you next time. That's the pod, everyone. If you have a movie you want reviewed or have some feedback to give us, send us a message at alostplot.com. If you like this podcast, please leave us a review. It really helps other people find our podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode and look forward to seeing you back with us next time. See you then.